Ever heard a story where everything goes wrong for the person who thought they were in charge? What if the person you thought was a threat turns out to be more powerful than you could ever imagine? And how fast can karma hit when someone acts out of arrogance, only to realize they've made a huge mistake? In today's video, we dive into an unbelievable real-life encounter where a police officer arrests a black man under false assumptions, only to discover, too late, that the man he detained was no ordinary civilian. No, this wasn't just a routine traffic stop gone wrong. This arrest had consequences that shook the officer to his core. Have you ever wondered what it takes for a single moment to flip someone's life upside down? Or how even the smallest misjudgments can carry massive consequences? This story shows us exactly that, and much more. But it's not just about a police officer making a mistake. It's about power, judgment, and the unexpected twist of karma waiting just around the corner. By the end of this video, you'll understand. Asterisk why it's crucial never to judge a person by appearances. Asterisk the hidden risks of letting power and authority go unchecked. Asterisk how some professions, like the CIA, are shrouded in secrecy, and why knowing someone's identity could change everything. Asterisk, and most importantly, how a single decision can have life-changing consequences in mere minutes. This isn't just any story, it's a reminder that karma works fast, and no one is above the law of consequences, no matter how powerful they believe they are. Make sure to stay until the end, because the way this situation unfolds will leave you stunned. The twists are worth the wait, and the way karma strikes back will give you chills. This is one of those stories you don't hear every day. So, if you're ready for a tale of power, misjudgment, and poetic justice, stick around, because this one's going to keep you at the edge of your seat. Let's dive right in. It all starts with a routine patrol on a quiet afternoon. The officer, sitting in his cruiser, notices a black car pull out from a side street without using a turn signal. To him, it's an easy excuse to stop the vehicle. Just another day enforcing the law. As the lights flash and the siren wails, the driver calmly pulls over to the side of the road. The officer approaches the window, his hand resting on the grip of his holstered weapon. From the start, something feels off. The driver is a black man, well-dressed, with an air of confidence that seems unusual to the officer. No panic, no nervousness, just a polite smile. The officer asks for his license and registration, but the driver's relaxed demeanor only fuels the officer's suspicion. Why isn't this guy worried? The officer thinks. What's he hiding? The officer begins to make assumptions. Maybe it's a stolen car. Maybe he's trying to act too cool to avoid suspicion. His mind races through scenarios. Every calm response from the driver feels like a challenge to the officer's authority. The man keeps his answers short and direct, handing over his documents without hesitation. Yet, instead of easing the officer's tension, the man's composure only deepens his mistrust. In the officer's eyes, it's not just a routine stop anymore. There must be more to this man than meets the eye. He runs the license through the system, expecting to find something, anything, that justifies his growing unease. But nothing comes up. The car isn't stolen, the license is clean, and there are no outstanding warrants. Still, the officer isn't satisfied. He makes a decision. If this guy won't break, I'll push him. The officer tells the man to step out of the car, insisting on a search. The driver raises an eyebrow, but complies without a word, keeping that same unsettling calm. The officer grows more frustrated. Something's not right here. It's just too smooth. By now, tension fills the air. Neighbors peek from windows. Passing drivers slow down to watch. The officer feels the pressure mount. He has to show he's in control. With little reason left to continue the stop, the officer begins searching the man and the vehicle, looking for anything suspicious. But still, nothing. No drugs, no weapons, not even a parking ticket in the glove compartment. Yet the officer can't let it go. The man's unshakable calm feels like a taunt, and the officer's frustration turns to anger. In his mind, this isn't just about law enforcement anymore. It's personal. He cuffs the man, telling him he's being detained for resisting the search, even though the man hasn't done anything remotely aggressive. There's a moment of silence. The driver locks eyes with the officer, and a subtle smile creeps across his face. It's not the smile of a guilty man. It's the smile of someone who knows something the officer doesn't. And that's when the officer feels the first flicker of doubt. What am I missing? The officer's patience runs out. His instincts tell him something is off, even if the facts don't back him up. His heart races as he grips the man's arm and announces, "You're under arrest." The charge: resisting search and failure to cooperate. It's a flimsy excuse, but in the officer's mind, it justifies his actions. He needs to regain control of this situation before it slips away. The man, surprisingly, doesn't fight back. No raised voice, no sudden movement. He simply allows the officer to slap the cold metal cuffs on his wrists. Too calm, too confident. This only makes the officer more uneasy. He thinks, why isn't this guy scared? What's he hiding? The officer glances around, feeling the weight of curious eyes from bystanders gathering nearby. The pressure builds. He has to assert his authority now. As the officer leads the man to the patrol car, the tension is thick. Each step feels heavier, as if something big is just waiting to explode. The man remains silent, his expression unreadable. It's almost as if he knows something the officer doesn't, something that will turn the tables soon. And that silence, it's unsettling, like the calm before a storm. While securing the man in the back seat, the officer's mind spirals with frustration. I'll figure this guy out at the station, he thinks, slamming the door shut. But as he walks back to inspect the car again, a chill creeps up his spine. Did I just make a huge mistake? The officer tries to shake it off. He thinks about how he'll file his report, frame it in a way that makes the arrest look justified. Maybe add a note about the man acting suspicious or uncooperative. That's what people expect, right? He's done this before. It should be just another routine case. But this time, it feels different. Something is gnawing at him, a feeling he can't quite shake. In the back of the patrol car, the man shifts slightly, the faint clink of the cuffs breaking the heavy silence. He leans forward just a bit, meeting the officer's gaze in the rearview mirror. There's no fear, no frustration, just a knowing look, like he's in control even with his hands tied. The officer's hands tighten on the steering wheel. A bead of sweat forms on his brow. He can't understand why, but he feels like the ground beneath him is starting to crumble. What's wrong with me? I'm the one with the badge, the authority. But that calm expression in the mirror, it's starting to haunt him. As they prepare to leave the scene, the officer tries calling in the arrest. But before he can finish his report, the man in the backseat quietly says something that makes the officer freeze. I suggest you check my ID again. The words are soft, almost polite, but they carry the weight of a warning. And in that moment, the officer feels a cold wave of regret washing over him. His heart sinks. What did I just do? As the patrol car pulls away from the curb, a heavy silence blankets the air, interrupted only by the soft hum of the engine. The officer's thoughts race as he grips the steering wheel. In the back seat, the man sits still, his expression unchanging. The officer's stomach churns with unease, and he can't shake the feeling that something is very wrong. What's your name? The officer asks, breaking the silence. He expects a simple answer, but instead, the man leans back slightly, the hint of a smirk dancing at the corners of his mouth. I think you know who I am. The words hang in the air, thick with tension, sending a shiver down the officer's spine. He glances at the rearview mirror, searching for any sign of deception, but the man's calm demeanor only deepens his worry. Who is this guy? The officer's heart races as he recalls the odd way the man carried himself during the stop. The nonchalance, the confidence. What if he's someone important? With a knot tightening in his chest, The officer decides to check the man's identification again. He pulls over, flipping through his notes. The man's name is now burned into his mind, but it feels familiar, like a whisper echoing in the back of his consciousness. Suddenly, the officer remembers a briefing from a few weeks ago about a high-profile CIA operation in the area, one involving a black agent who had gone undercover. No, it can't be. The officer's mind races, connecting the dots. He fumbles with his radio, fingers trembling, but the words won't come out. The man watches, unblinking, as the realization dawns on the officer. This isn't just any arrest. I've made a terrible mistake. Feeling trapped in his own choices, the officer's breath quickens. He thinks about the paperwork he'll have to fill out, the explanations he'll need to give. How can I explain this? He remembers the curious faces of the bystanders who watched the arrest unfold. They'd witnessed his authority challenged, his decisions questioned. The weight of their judgment presses heavily on him. You really should check my credentials, the man says softly, his voice steady. It might change how you handle this situation. The words hang in the air, laced with an ominous hint. The officer hesitates, his hands trembling as he reaches for his phone, trying to find a way to confirm the man's identity without drawing too much attention. As he dials the number, a chilling realization sweeps over him. What if it's too late? The officer can already imagine the headlines flashing across news outlets, the public outcry over a simple traffic stop that turned into a wrongful arrest of a CIA agent. What will my colleagues think? What will my superiors say? The air feels thick with tension as he waits for a response. Each second stretches into eternity, and the man's gaze remains unwavering. It's as if he knows the gravity of the situation, and the officer can't help but feel like a child caught in a lie. Just then, the radio crackles to life. A voice on the other end asks for the name of the detainee. The officer swallows hard, his throat dry, and stutters out the name. He hears a moment of silence, followed by an urgent tone. Wait one moment. We need to verify something. His heart pounds in his chest. The officer glances back at the man, who sits there, unflinching, as if he's been through this before. The uncertainty hangs thick in the air, and the tension is palpable. Time seems to freeze as the officer realizes that in just a few moments, everything could change forever. The silence in the patrol car is deafening. The officer's hands shake slightly as he waits for confirmation, the weight of the moment pressing down on him like a heavy fog. He glances in the rearview mirror again, meeting the man's steady gaze. It feels like a duel, each waiting for the other to make a move. Why did I jump to conclusions? The officer's mind spirals with self-doubt, wrestling with the reality of the situation. Suddenly, the radio crackles again, breaking through his thoughts. Officer, we've run the name. Stand by for a crucial update. The officer's heart races as adrenaline surges through him. Crucial update. His stomach twists in knots, the reality of what he's done becoming painfully clear. He thinks back to the way he acted, overconfident, careless, and he can't shake the feeling that he's just sealed his own fate. As he waits, the man leans forward slightly, a faint smile playing on his lips. You might want to reconsider your actions. The words drip with a calm assurance that sends chills down the officer's spine. The man continues, you have no idea who you're dealing with. There's a depth to his voice that holds a promise of revelation, and the officer's curiosity mingles with fear. Then, just like that, the radio bursts to life again. Officer, we confirm the identity of the detainee. He is indeed a CIA agent, involved in an operation that requires immediate attention. The words hit the officer like a slap to the face, a wave of humiliation washing over him. What have I done? He glances at the man in the back seat, whose expression has shifted from calm to one of quiet amusement. The officer feels the blood drain from his face as the truth sinks in. The gravity of his mistake settles heavily in his chest. How could I be so foolish? He'd seen the man's ID. Why didn't he connect the dots sooner? What now? The officer mutters under his breath, his voice barely above a whisper. The man leans back, folding his arms with a satisfied smirk. Now you get to explain to your superiors how you arrested someone who was simply doing their job. The man's tone is steady, almost mocking, and the officer feels a sense of impending doom. In that moment, everything begins to unravel. The officer realizes he's not just dealing with a mistake. He's in the middle of a situation that could have dire consequences. The weight of his badge feels heavier than ever. With every tick of the clock, the reality of his actions looms larger. The radio crackles again, pulling him from his thoughts. "Officer, we need to assess the situation. Please confirm your location and status." He stares at the radio, the words barely registering. In the distance, he can hear sirens approaching, and panic grips him. What if his colleagues arrive and find out what he's done? He swallows hard, trying to steady his voice as he replies, "I'm at the corner of 5th and Elm." And he hesitates, his heart pounding. "I have a detained CIA agent." The words taste bitter on his tongue, a confession of his failure. He can almost hear the gasps from the other officers when they arrive. The man in the back seat watches him, eyes glimmering with something like satisfaction. "This could all have been avoided, you know," he says softly, the calm in his voice taunting. The officer can't shake the feeling that the man is reveling in the chaos he's created, and that thought sends a shiver down his spine. With every passing second, the reality of the situation looms larger. The sirens grow louder, and the officer feels the walls closing in. This is it. This is where everything changes. He steels himself for the confrontation, knowing that the truth is out there, and it's going to shatter his world. The sound of sirens blares as more patrol cars pull up to the scene, their lights flashing in a chaotic dance of red and blue. The officer's heart races, each beat a reminder of the storm brewing around him. He watches as his fellow officers step out, confusion etched on their faces. They approach cautiously, glancing between him and the man in the back seat, who sits with an air of calm authority. What will they think? The officer's mind spirals as the weight of his error bears down on him. Will they see me as a fool? He feels their judgment, heavy and unyielding, and he can't help but wish he could disappear into the asphalt beneath him. One of the officers steps forward, brow furrowed. What's going on here? The question hangs in the air, thick with tension. The officer struggles to find the words, feeling the truth slip through his fingers like sand. I arrested him, but he stammers, struggling to explain the unexplainable. The CIA agent, however, doesn't miss a beat. With a smooth smile, he turns toward the new arrivals. "I believe your colleague here has made a serious mistake," he says, his voice dripping with a calm that contrasts sharply with the chaos around them. The officer's heart sinks further as he watches the agent's confidence wash over his colleagues, stealing the attention from him. How did it come to this? As he stands there, exposed and vulnerable, the officer remembers the smug expressions of bystanders who had witnessed the arrest. Their eyes were wide with shock and disbelief. Had they seen the man's true nature, or were they simply wrapped up in the drama of the moment? He tries to explain himself, to piece together a defense that might salvage his reputation, but the words come out as a jumble of confusion and regret. The agent watches him with a mixture of pity and amusement, and the officer can't help but feel like a puppet on strings, manipulated by forces he can't control. As more officers gather, the atmosphere grows tense. Whispers spread like wildfire among them, and the officer can sense the shift in energy. He is no longer the authority figure. He's the subject of scrutiny. What will happen next? The thought claws at him as he feels the walls closing in. The officer's sergeant arrives, eyes narrowing as he takes in the scene. What happened here? The sergeant's tone is sharp, and the officer feels a chill run down his spine. It's not just a routine inquiry. It feels like a judgment day. He opens his mouth to speak, but the agent interjects. "Let me clarify, officer. I was simply performing my duty." The sergeant raises an eyebrow, clearly intrigued by the agent's composed demeanor. The officer's heart sinks as he realizes the agent is taking control of the narrative. He watches helplessly as the agent spins the tale, painting himself as the victim of an overzealous officer. The officer tries to regain control of the conversation, but his voice falters, drowned out by the rising tide of murmurs. I didn't know. He stutters, his words feeling inadequate against the weight of the situation. As he stands there, surrounded by the weight of his colleagues' gazes, the world seems to spin out of control. The agent smiles, a glimmer of satisfaction dancing in his eyes as he watches the officer squirm. Maybe next time, you'll think twice before you act. The taunt lingers in the air, a stark reminder of the consequences of a single decision. With the sergeant now taking charge, the officer knows there's no escaping the fallout. The reality of his mistake crashes down on him like a tidal wave, threatening to drag him under. This is just the beginning. The thought sends shivers down his spine as he braces himself for what lies ahead, knowing that the aftermath of this encounter will ripple through his life in ways he can't yet imagine. Days pass, but the shadow of that fateful encounter lingers like a dark cloud over the officer's life. Each morning, he wakes with a sense of dread, the reality of his actions gnawing at him like a relentless predator. What will they say? The thought echoes in his mind as he prepares for the day, the fear of facing his colleagues heavy on his shoulders. The department is abuzz with rumors. Whispers follow him in the hallways, eyes darting away when he approaches. He feels the isolation wrap around him like a shroud. Once a respected officer, he now walks with his head down, each step heavy with the weight of judgment. They think I'm a joke. The realization stings, cutting deeper than he anticipated. During roll call, the atmosphere is thick with tension. The sergeant's gaze cuts through the room, landing squarely on him. We need to address what happened the other day. The sergeant begins, and the officer's heart races. The room grows still, all eyes on him, and he can feel the heat rising in his cheeks. The sergeant lays it all out. The embarrassment the department faced, the potential fallout from the CIA, the fear of being scrutinized for their actions. Each word feels like a nail in the coffin of his career. Why did I let it come to this? He swallows hard, but the lump in his throat makes it difficult to breathe. Then the sergeant turns to him directly, a piercing look in his eyes. You put us all in danger. You understand that, right? The officer nods, shame flooding over him. It's not just his career on the line. It's the safety of his fellow officers, too. He's become a liability, a mistake that could cost them all dearly. Outside, the sun shines brightly, but inside the station, darkness looms. Colleagues exchange glances, their expressions a mixture of pity and disdain. As the officer leaves the meeting, the weight of his decision hangs heavily on him, a constant reminder of his failure. He thinks about the CIA agent's smirk, the way the man had turned the situation to his advantage. He got away with it, didn't he? But the consequences don't stop there. Days turn into weeks, and soon, a formal investigation is launched into the incident. The officer's world spirals further into chaos as he learns that his actions may lead to disciplinary measures, perhaps even termination. Each notification from his superiors feels like a countdown to his professional demise. He tries to defend himself, to explain the circumstances that led to the arrest, but every word feels weak against the tidal wave of evidence stacked against him. The more he speaks, the more it seems like he's digging himself deeper into a hole. Why can't I get it right? Each failed attempt leaves him more frustrated, more desperate. As the investigation drags on, he becomes a shell of the confident officer he once was. He starts avoiding social gatherings, isolating himself from friends and family. The weight of the world rests on his shoulders, and he fears he might crumble under it. What if I lose everything? The thought haunts him at night, and sleep becomes a distant memory. The fallout also reaches his family, who are left to navigate the gossip and whispers in the community. His children hear the talk at school, and their faces show the confusion and hurt they feel. The officer's heart breaks with each look of disappointment from them. I'm letting them down. He grapples with the duality of being a father and a man who has failed in his duty. Just when he thinks it can't get worse, he receives a call from Internal Affairs, asking for a meeting. The words Internal Affairs send a shiver down his spine, a reminder that the consequences of his actions are not just personal. They're a matter of public record. He knows that this meeting could be the beginning of the end for him. As he prepares for the meeting, the officer reflects on his choices, his mind racing through a series of what-ifs. What if I had just taken a moment to think? The regret gnaws at him, relentless and unforgiving. He grips the steering wheel tightly, fighting against the rising tide of anxiety as he drives toward the station, unsure of what awaits him. As the days stretch into weeks, the officer finds himself alone with his thoughts, wrestling with the heavy weight of regret. He sits in his car during his lunch breaks, staring at the dashboard, a silent witness to his turmoil. How did I let it come to this? His mind drifts back to that day, replaying every moment like a broken record. He winces at the memory of the CIA agent's calm demeanor, his smug confidence mocking him. Each passing day feels like a test, and he begins to question everything he once believed in. Am I still the man I thought I was? The questions gnaw at him, a constant reminder of his failure. He knows he needs to make things right, not just for himself, but for those who believed in him. But how? One evening, he stands in front of the mirror, staring into his own eyes, searching for the officer he used to be. He recalls the oath he took, the promise to protect and serve. I can't let this define me, he whispers to himself. Determination flickers within him, a small flame amid the shadows. He realizes he must confront the consequences head-on, rather than hiding from them. Driven by this newfound resolve, he reaches out to his superiors, asking for guidance. I want to make amends, he tells them, his voice steady yet laced with vulnerability. He knows this will be an uphill battle, but the thought of standing idly by makes him restless. He throws himself into community service, volunteering at local events, hoping to regain some semblance of trust. He helps organize neighborhood safety meetings, talking to residents about their concerns and listening intently. Each conversation is a step toward redemption, yet the shadow of his past looms large over him. At one of these events, he meets a young boy who reminds him of his own son. The boy shares stories about how he dreams of becoming a police officer, just like him. What would he think of me if he knew? The thought strikes him hard, igniting a surge of determination. He realizes that his actions can have a ripple effect, not just on his life, but on the lives of those who look up to him. But just as he begins to feel the warmth of redemption, whispers of his past continue to swirl around him like a storm. Some people in the community still remember that day, their judgment lingering in the air like a heavy fog. He overhears conversations about the incident, and it stings. Will I ever be able to escape this shadow? In quiet moments, he reflects on what led him to that fateful encounter. Was it arrogance? Ignorance? He knows he must dig deeper, confronting not just the incident, but the attitudes and biases that may have influenced his actions. Each day becomes a lesson, forcing him to grow in ways he never anticipated. Then, a breakthrough comes when the department organizes a forum on community policing. He volunteers to speak, fully aware that it could either be his redemption or his downfall. Standing in front of a crowd, he feels the weight of their eyes on him, the tension thick enough to cut. He opens his mouth to speak, and for a moment, the world stands still. I made a mistake, he admits, his voice trembling but resolute. The room falls silent, and he can almost hear the heartbeat of every person listening. I acted without thinking, and it cost me my reputation, my pride, and nearly my career. He shares his story, the fear, the judgment, the pain of facing his family and colleagues. He talks about his journey of reflection and the steps he's taken to make things right. As he speaks, he sees some nodding in understanding, while others look on skeptically. But he presses on, driven by a desire to show that redemption is possible, even for those who stumble. When he finishes, the silence hangs for a moment before breaking into soft applause. He's surprised by the warmth that floods him. Maybe this is the beginning of a new chapter. But deep down,